G'day, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Harry, and as usual, we're back out in the doghouse. Today we're going to take a proper look at the Cooper's DIY beer kit. Now I picked this one up for 99 bucks from Big W, and if you're watching from the US, that works out to be about $5.50 in proper dollars plus tax. Basically, if you've got some change under your couch, then you're covered. I'm joking, of course, but speaking of monopoly money, so just so we're clear, this video isn't sponsored, and as always, you're going to get my honest thoughts and opinions. Look, I've been brewing my own beer since 1994, and let's be real, the last thing I need right now is another home brew kit. Seriously, the things I do for you lot. So I wanted to check this one out, because back when I started, all of the starter kits, well, let's just say they were average at best. So I'm looking at this from the perspective of someone completely new to brewing, someone who doesn't have a local home brew shop handy, or maybe they got this kit for Christmas or Father's Day instead of the usual socks and jocks. So, is this kit a good way to get started, or are you better off spending your hard-earned cash somewhere else? Well, we're going to figure that out and work out if the gear's actually any good. Let's be real with each other for a sec here. This isn't some high-end Apple product, so I'm not going to bang on about how amazing the box is. What you're getting here is a big-ass box. Sure, it's nicely printed, and there's a bit of info on it, but it's nothing worth framing. That said, don't chuck it straight in the recycling bin. It's actually pretty handy. You can use it to store all of your brewing gear. So let's get into it. Let's zip this thing open and see what's inside. All right, first impressions. It's actually pretty well packed. I get an instruction manual. We'll put that to one side. There doesn't seem to be anything overly fragile in here, which is good. All right, so we get bottles, lots and lots of bottles that are stacked inside the fermenter. All right, so if we can pull that out. Okay, so we get our actual fermenter body itself. Our Krausen ring. Lots of bottles. The lid for the fermenter. And a mixing spoon, a hydrometer with a bottling wand. Have a look at that in a minute. Okay, that looks like it's our first batch of beer. There's a can of concentrate, some bottle lids and stuff. We'll have a bit of a closer look at that in a sec. Right, let's have a bit of a look in here. So, zip that open. There's our bottle caps. A tin of concentrate, it's a lager. As well as our carbonation drops. So I mean the kit's pretty good. You get your 750ml bottles, 740ml bottles. You get your carbonation drops, you get the caps for the bottles, a brew enhancer, your first beer, as well as the fermenter itself, a mixing spoon, your tap, a couple of clips, as well as a thermometer. Ticking all the boxes so far, as well as a plastic hydrometer and a bottling wand. One thing I noticed straight away is there's no sanitizer included in the kit. For me, that's a pretty big miss on Cooper's part. Sanitation's absolutely crucial when we're brewing, and if your equipment's not clean, you're basically inviting an infection in your beer. Look, I'll show you what to use for sanitising and how to use it properly. Honestly, nothing ruins your excitement as a new brewer more than spending a couple of weeks waiting on your beer only to pour it out because it's gone funky. One thing I'll give Cooper's credit for is including a plastic hydrometer. I think it's a great idea and it's sturdy and you're not likely to break it. That being said, breaking a glass hydrometer is practically a rite of passage as a home brewer, so you're kind of missing out on a badge of honour there. Now here's something interesting. There's no airlock. Now my guess is Cooper's got sick of the helpline being flooded with calls with my airlock's not bubbling. Is my beer ruined? So they've gone with a completely different setup here. The tap itself, it doesn't have any threads. It basically uses 2 rubber grommets to seal. So that being said, that needs to be lubricated. Otherwise it's not going to seal correctly and you'll end up with beer running everywhere. Righto, let's get this thing put together so that we can move on and clean it. All right, so we're going to fit our tap. And the first thing I'm going to do is give those 2 O-rings a bit of a squirt with some sanitizer and just work that in to the fermenter there. And that seems pretty solid. I reckon we'll just put our thermometer there somewhere so it's always going to be in contact with the liquid. Now before we actually use this and start brewing, we've got to give it a clean and a sanitise. To clean it, I'm going to be using the Stella Clean, which is a sodium percarbonate based cleaner. If you don't have that, now that comes from Keglin. If you don't have that or something like that, what you can get away with is just the dye sand. Now that comes from Aldi, and it's just an unscented nappy sand basically. So we're ready to get going. The first thing we're going to do is make sure our tap's turned off and then check that the tap's turned off again. Last thing you want is a puddle running all over your floor. All right, into the fermenter itself, I'm going to put in a scoop of our sodium bicarbonate. Just got a bucket here with 10 litres of water, but we're not going to use all that. We'll just use a couple of litres. And then just in with our microfiber cloth. And we want to make sure that we give everything a good clean. Now you can do this in the sink if you want, but I don't have that luxury because I'm not allowed in the kitchen. Oh, that's pretty good. So once everything's had a good wash, the next thing we're going to do is give it a rinse out with the other half of our hot water. Just dump that in and give everything a good rinse. Again, make sure you get all the sides. Non-abrasive cloth. And we're just going to run some of that out through the tap. Just need to tilt him forward. I'll just rinse some of that and get rid of the rest of that rinse water. To sanitise, we're going to use a phosphoric acid based sanitizer. This one's Stella Sand. It comes from Kegland again. And into our fermenter, all we're going to do is drop 2 litres of water in and 3 mils of our sanitizer. We'll just get in there, give that syringe a rinse out. Now, into here, we're just going to put the lid on and just give everything a good shake and make sure that we cover all surfaces of that fermenter. Shake it like it owes you money. Once we're done with that, we can grab our mixing spoon and just dump that into the fermenter itself and give it a bit of a shake round, and we'll get ready to actually brew this beer. So what we've just covered is cleaning and sanitising. Seriously guys, do not skip this step. It's probably the most important part of making sure that you end up successful with your first batch. Now we're going to save that sanitizer that we just ran through the fermenter itself. And I'm just going to open that tap up, run some sanitizer through the tap. Now you'll end up with a bunch of foam from the phosphoric based sanitizer. That's nothing to be worried about. The yeast will actually use that as a bit of a nutrient. So there's no need to freak out if you've got a whole bunch of bubbles left at the bottom of your fermenter itself. So there's a couple of things you'll need that doesn't come in the kit. You'll need a pair of scissors. And you'll need a can opener. As well as a kettle. From here on in, anytime you put something down, including the scissors and the can opener, straight back into your jug of sanitizer. That goes for along with your spoon. So anything that touches your brew from now on needs to be exposed to sanitizer. And we'll just whack the lid back on our fermenter until we're ready for that. Let's move that out of the way for now. Move our hydrometer out of the way over here. So we'll now get on with preparing our tin of extract. So with our tin of extract, what we're going to do is rip the plastic top off. That's our yeast sachet. We're just going to put that to one side. And if we have a look here, there's a peel here tab. Just peel that up and away, and underneath is a bunch of instructions. And we'll just peel that off and put them to one side as well. Now that we've got our can all prepped up, you can either put that in your sink. I don't have a sink because I'm out here in the doghouse. Or into a bowl. Just put it in a bowl and then top that up with hot water to allow that concentrate to loosen up. Righto, so in with our first lot of hot water. And while that's soaking, we'll get the jug back on again and get on with the next step. So what we're going to do is take the lid off the fermenter, turn him upside down, put him somewhere out of the way. Grab our sanitised pair of scissors. Open our box of the brew enhancer. Cut him open. Put our scissors back in the sanitizer and just tip our brew enhancer into the fermenter itself. So we get all that well mixed in. Once that's done, we'll then grab hold of our tea towel and deal with this can. So let's just move this out of the way for a sec. And move in where you can see. All right, so that's been in that boiling water for about 5 minutes, and that should have all softened up. So pull him out, grab our sanitised can opener, I'll open this tin, add that liquid malt to the fermenter. Now, rinse our lid off with a bit of hot water. And get the bulk of it, and then we'll just add the rest of that kettle into that tin of concentrate. Then we're going to start topping up the fermenter with our dechlorinated tap water. Into that, we're going to add 10 litres to start with. With our dechlorinated tap water. Mix that through. All right, now this is going to be far too hot for the yeast. So on with the next little trick that I'll show you. So I've got a bunch of cold water that I've just had sitting in the fridge. We'll just add that. And top it up to the 23 litre mark. Now depending on your groundwater temperature at your place, you might need more bottles than me, you might need less bottles than me. And if you're unsure, you can do a test run with 2 litres of hot water and just run it as a water only test. Alright, so we've added our water Give it a good mix. And we're sitting at 20 degrees. So that's good, we're well within range. Next thing we're going to do is take our yeast packet, dunk it in the sanitizer, grab your scissors straight out of that sanitizer. Don't use your teeth, we're not on a backyard survivor show, and just sprinkle the yeast over the top of your wort. Done. From there, we're going to add our krausen collar and put the lid back on. And from there, that's going to go into my temperature controlled fridge after I take a gravity reading. Righto, so it's in the fermentation chamber. And there's our gravity there. Now when we read our hydrometer, we go from the bottom of the meniscus. I'll show you that with a little arrow. Now, whatever you do, you don't want to tip this back into the fermenter. That's done, you can either drink it or tip it down the sink. We'll have a bit of a taste. We're back over at the bench now, we've taken our gravity reading. What I like to do is our instructions that we put aside. I like to write on the back of this. So ours was OG was 1.037. Once I've done that, I just grab some blue painter's tape, tear off a piece and stick it at the top of the fermenter, and that way you always know where it is and it doesn't get thrown out when we start cleaning up. So you can see I've just stuck that label to the top there. Righto, let's talk about what's coming up in the next few days, and more importantly, what not to do. Once the yeast is pitched and the lid's on, you're officially in the don't touch it phase. Leave it alone, don't crack the lid open, don't have a sticky beak, don't poke or prod at it or start thinking you need to help it along. Trust me, the yeast know exactly what they're doing. For the first day or two, you might not see much happening at all, but don't panic. That's perfectly normal. By day 3, you'll likely notice some foam or some krausen forming on the top, in and along here, on our top of our krausen ring. And the fermenter might even look like it's bubbling. And that's okay, it's just the yeast getting down to business. Now, fermentation usually wraps up in about 7 days, but that can vary depending on how your yeast are feeling and what temperature you're keeping your brew at. At around day 6, we're going to take gravity sample. So grab your sanitised sample jar, take a sample just like we did before, and check it with your hydrometer. You write that number down, and on day 7, we take another reading. If the gravity hasn't changed between day 6 and 7, you're good to go. It's bottling time. If it has moved, leave it another day or 2 and check it again. The key here is patience. Let the yeast finish their job, or you'll end up with overcarbonated beer or worse, exploding bottles. So for the next week, keep the fermenter nice and stable temperature, keep it out of direct sunlight and resist the urge to fiddle with it. Your job's now to wait and maybe start thinking about that delicious beer at the end of the bottling process. Rightio, that's it for this week's video. We're only halfway through the process. So make sure you stick around for next week's video where we get into getting this thing bottled up, and later on we'll give it a taste, make some notes, have a good chat about how it all turned out. After that, I'll bring it all together with a kits and bits video and share my final thoughts on whether this Cooper's DIY kit is worth your time and hard-earned cash. Look, thanks for watching, and if you've got some value out of this video, give us a thumbs up. And if you've subscribed recently, look, thanks for your support. It means the world to me. At least I know I'm not out here talking to myself. Look, I'll see you next week. Till then, remember, life's too short to drink dodgy beers. Cheers. Oh yeah.